Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're able to hear okay. Apparently, I can't get it to go the horizontal, so this is just the way it's going to be from now on, it seems, unless something changes with the way they allow this to work. Okay, tonight's class is in honor and in merit of everybody who is all the Jewish people, wherever they may be, especially those in the land of Israel, those in the front lines, those who um, who need to be rescued, and may our learning be a merit for them. Okay, let's jump into it. In this week's Torah portion, we read about the construction of the tabernacle, of the movable temple, and all the different things that were in it. And God commands the Jewish people to donate towards that and to build a different thing, build the different things. And one of the main things that are being built, that are being the details of how to build it in this week's Torah portion, is the ark, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was God would speak to Moses. Moses would hear God's voice from the ark, from between the cherubim, the cherubs that were on top of the ark, and it was placed in the Holy of Holies, and it would only be the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, only enter that area only on Yom Kippur. And of course, we know that the ark was considered so special that it wasn't allowed to be transported in any other way except through being held by people. And there's a lot of history about that. And in general, the ark is one of the most special things, holy things in the temple and the tabernacle. And if you could hear me, make sure to put a thumbs up. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. We got the sound fixed, like I mentioned, but we did not get the horizontal thing fixed. Seems like you can't do that anymore. Okay, so let's jump into it. In this week's Torah portion, in Exodus chapter 25, verse 16, God tells us, "V'nasat el ha'aron, you shall put into the ark es ha'edos, the testimony, asher etein elacha, which I will give to you." So God tells Moses, you shall put the testimony in the ark. What is the testimony? So Rashi, who is the foremost commentator on the Torah, says, HaTorah, it's the Torah, Shehi la'edos beini uveinechem, which is, why is it called testimony? Because it is the testimony between you and me. Because I have commanded you the mitzvahs, the commandments that were written in it. So the testimony refers to the Torah. And in the Talmud, also comments on this. It says, Rabbi Yosef taught, this teaches us that the tablets and the broken tablets and were placed in the ark. Okay, so let's just take a step back. That number one, we have the tablets that were given 40 days after the revelation at Sinai. Moses broke those tablets. They were not thrown in the garbage. They were wholly written by God's hand. Then we have, of course, the tablets that were after 40 days, Moses goes back up the mountain, comes back down on Yom Kippur. The Jewish people have been forgiven. And those tablets are not broken. So we have two sets of tablets. And we also have, and they are placed in the ark. Okay, just making sure everything's good. Everything's good. Okay, they are placed in the ark. And then they were left in the ark, including until even when they were in the temple. Same thing. Nothing was ever removed from the ark. So you have two sets of tablets. And then in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 24 through 26, we have something else. Moses writes the entire Torah down. Okay, and it says in Deuteronomy, when Moses finished writing the words of this Torah in a scroll until the very completion, Moses commanded the Levites who carried the Ark of the Covenant of God, saying, "Take this Torah scroll and place it alongside the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and it will be there as a witness. Okay? And Rashi, again, comments right away that it was laid alongside the tablets inside the Ark. Okay? So Moses tells the Jewish people, in Deuteronomy, in addition to the eidos that we mentioned, in this week's Torah portion, the testimony referring to the tablets should be placed in the Ark. In addition, an actual Torah scroll that Moses wrote in his own hand is going to be placed in the Ark as well. And Maimonides, in his introduction to the Mishnah Torah, to his code of Jewish law, he explains as follows. Moses wrote the entire Torah before his passing in his own hand. He gave a copy to each tribe, and one copy was placed in the Ark of Testimony. As the verse states, take this Torah scroll and place it alongside the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, and it will be there as a witness. So Moses wrote 13 Torah scrolls. One he gave to each tribe, and one he put in the Ark. Okay, so Moses wrote 13 Torah scrolls in his at the end of his life. Okay, now we have next is, let's go into what size was the Ark. So the Torah tells us in this week's Torah portion, they shall make an ark of acacia wood. I don't know what acacia wood is. It's some sort of wood. 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its depth. You shall overlay it with pure gold. From inside and from outside you shall overlay it. You shall make upon it a golden crown all around. Okay? So God tells us that it's 2.5 cubits by 2.5 it's a rectangle. So it's 2.5 cubits by 1.5 cubits wide. So it's a rectangle, and then 1.5 cubits in depth. Okay? So now that we know how big the ark was, let's figure out how big were the contents of the ark. So the ark, the Talmud in Bava Basra, page 14a, says as follows. The ark that Moses made was 2.5 cubits in length by 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits in depth. These cubits were each comprised of 6 handbreadths. Okay, so 6 handbreadths, that means like a fist. Okay, from your thumb to the end. Okay, let's just assume for a second that's an average person's hand is about that size. It's about 5 or 6 inches. Not really relevant to our conversation exactly how big it is, but so every cubit is 6 handbreadths. Okay, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir as quoted in the Talmud. Okay, so if each cubit is 6 handbreadths, that means you have 1.5. So if you have for the length is 2.5 cubits, so that means you're going to have 12, right? 2 is 12 plus half is another additional 3, so that is 15 handbreadths. Okay, and it's going to be 9 handbreadths wide, and it's going to be 9 handbreadths deep. Okay, we have here some more modern measurements. 48 centimeters is a cubit, or 18.9 inches, and a handbreadth is 3.5 inches, or 18 centimeters. So I was close. Okay, so depending on who you ask, I guess, right? If trying to get the ancient measurements to match our measurements. Okay, so the Talmud continues that the tablets were 6 handbreadths in length and 6 handbreadths in width. Okay, so the tablets were actually square. They were not rectangle. They were square. So they're 6 by 6 and 3 handbreadths deep. Okay, so there's 6 handbreadths. Well, I guess they are rectangle because they're not so they're square, but they're not like square on all sides. They're a square, and they're only 3 handbreadths deep, which means wide. Okay, so they're 6 by 6, so that means equals a square. That means both tablets together plus 3 handbreadths wide. Okay, now he continues in the Talmud. The tablets consumed 12 handbreadths of the length of the ark, leaving 3 free. Subtract 1 handbreadth, meaning half a handbreadth on each side. For the walls, yeah, right, the actual walls have to take up some sort of thickness. That leaves us with 2 handbreadths. The Torah scroll was placed in this space. Okay, so let's try this again. So we have 15 by 15, right? Well, we know we really only have 14 by 14 in the inside because one handbreadth is the actual thickness of the walls. So if we have 14 by 14, 12 takes up 12 by it. So now we have 14 by 6. Okay. So then we have two left. Okay. And again, now we have two sets of tablets. So it actually goes to 6. And we have 2 left for the actual, the Torah scroll, which fits perfectly. So the ark, there's no empty space in the ark. Okay. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Okay. Now, and the same thing goes the other way. Okay, so we said there's now there's 9, right? There's 9. So we have the width we have covered. Now we have to do the other way, right? Because it's so we have 6, but there's 9. There's 9 handbreadths. Okay, so let us look at the width. The tablets consume 6 handbreadths, leaving, right? Because again, there's 3 plus 3 because there's 2 of them, leaving 3 remaining. Subtract 1 handbreadth for the walls on either side. Allow the Torah to be placed inside. And that leaves 2 handbreadths, allowing the Torah to be placed inside and remove with ease. Okay, so the Torah scroll takes up 2 handbreadths by 2 handbreadths. That is how big the Torah scroll was. So it fits perfectly inside the ark. There's a little bit of drop of space. There was a little bit of space. Sorry, there were 2 handbreadths. I'm sorry, in order to give space for it to be taken out. Okay. So we have the ark is full and just enough space to put your hands in and take something out potentially. So it's not like full in the sense there's no space, but it's full. That's Rabbi Meir. There's other opinions in the Talmud. We're not going to get into all the opinions. But essentially what we see is that the ark was totally filled by the space of the tablets. Now, let's get into this idea. So there's been the Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke about this on a couple of occasions, this idea that we see that from the Talmud that it's pretty clear that the tablets were square. And however, historically, for many, many years, Jewish people have been drawing the tablets as being curved at the top. I don't know, I'm not a historian, I don't know who started it, but apparently Christian artists started to draw the tablets like the way that many of us would recognize them. And for some reason, the Jewish people adopted this depiction and started using it in many Jewish depictions of whether in synagogue or on letterheads, etc. Now, even though that this is a clear Talmud, this isn't something in some holy mystical book, for some reason this became kind of a historical mistake. And now, if not only would it be does it not square, no pun intended, with what the Talmud says, right? That it says that it gives the measurements. That if you were to say they were round, then you would have empty space in the ark it wouldn't really fit. And then the question is, why would God ask us to make an ark that doesn't fit the tablets? So and this is the word in the Talmud. We didn't use the original, but the word in the Talmud is that it consumes all the space of the ark. So the fact they used that word "consume" shows that all the space of the ark was used. There was no, just space for keeping your lunch in or having something round versus something round in a place that should be square. Now, in fact, not only is, again, as we said, it seems that Talmud is very clear that they were square. It's very clear that they have to be square. And there is no Jewish source for the tablets being round. There is no Jewish source that says the tablets were round. In fact, we have multiple Jewish sources that say the opposite. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, he was a medieval sage, he says they were square. No, the tablets were square, 6 handbreadths in length and 6 in width. As the sages explained in the Talmud, the tablets were 6 in length and 6 in width and 3 deep. Okay? So, the Rabbeinu Bechaya, a medieval rabbi, said that this is very, very clearly, he says that they were square. Now, why did this happen? Probably because the simplest explanation is that there were many censorships in Jewish printing and Jewish literature that probably the Jewish people were not either the non-Jews were changing it into what their depiction was when they would print Jewish books, or Jewish people were self-censoring. We see that a lot. So whatever the scenario was, the Jewish people were not looking at the title page. They weren't, of books and publications of these depictions. They didn't care. They cared about the content. So eventually it probably became kind of standard procedure that, well, the previous edition of the Talmud or whatever, Chumash or whatever book the Jewish people were using, they printed the last edition with rounded, tablets. So let's put this one in. And again, it probably, and nowadays that the fact that we don't have these problems of censorship anymore, this is something that should be corrected. And we're going to get into why this is important. Another rabbi that pointed this out, was a rabbi who, his name was Rabbi Eliyahu Katz. He was the chief rabbi of Slovakia, and he was also the chief rabbi of Beersheba, or he was a rabbi in Beersheba. I'm not sure if there was a chief rabbin at that point when he lived there. And he writes as follows: I must note that this concept is foreign to the Jewish tradition. The Christian and non-Jewish artists are the ones that depicted the tablets with round tops. This shape is not only not ideal, it is best to avoid drawing it that way. And he even found, and this Rabbi Katz also found an old machzor from the Middle Ages called the Lipsia machzor, which he republished, which contained the tablets depicted as square, which obviously were not influenced by the Christians, or for some reason they weren't censored. And in his book he writes, "Thank God there are several synagogues who have accepted my advice and done accordingly. And I bless them that the reward from heaven be twofold, like the two tablets that God gave us." So, obviously this Rabbi Katz also felt that this was very important. Now let's go back to why is this important. The Lubavitcher Rebbe again spoke about this on a couple occasions and wrote about it on a few occasions. And one of the things that he writes was that the fact that this is that Jewish children are being taught this, that they see it whether published in books, written in on their school stationery, or in a synagogue. This is what ends up happening, is that Jewish children end up being confused, because they're taught in the Talmud very clearly that they were square, and then they see that everyone writes something else, and it causes a confusion for children who are being taught these things. And the Rebbe again said that this was something that he didn't see the downside in changing it, even though previous generations did it in this way. But since it was since this is something that's important to Jewish education, you can't really say, well, we don't want to offend the previous rabbis who depicted it like this, or previous printers, or previous institutions, whatever it may be. This is something that is really important, that we have to correct it, that the tablets must be depicted as being square. And really, it's not just about, obviously it is about this, it is about the fact that we always should depict the tablets correctly, because not only is it something that was brought from another influence, but also it's important to teach things correctly to children and in education, but it's also a message about general education. That it's very important when we teach, whether ourselves or we teach the next generation, we always have to be clear that we have to act based on the things that we're teaching. If we don't act the same way on the things that we're teaching, then there could be confusion, and children, they see the hypocrisy that, you said that you're supposed to do this, and I don't see you doing that. So it's always important to teach children, and to not just teach them, but to show them, and to be a living example of the things that we're teaching them. I want to wish everybody a good Shabbos. Have a great week, and God willing, we will see you next week.